The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It is Tuesday, February 5th, and I'm sorry we have to start the show by saying thank heavens the standoff is over in Alabama, and gratefully I think all of our prayers have been answered, and this young man, the little boy who was being held hostage into his 7th day, has been returned to his family. We're told that he is unharmed. I know that only tells part of the story, right? And a really important part of the story, but there's no way that you could have gone through something like that and not be affected by it. But thank heavens that it's over and he is home with his family. I can't imagine how grateful they are to have him home. We know so very little about how they actually rescued him, although we do know that in those days leading up to when they did finally intervene, that they were able to they kept it very hush-hush, and they're still saying that they want to continue to keep it hush-hush because they have very sophisticated techniques that they use in order to carry this out and ensure the safety of the young boy, and they don't want to disclose what their secrets are in case they need to use them again, and I can appreciate that. But we do know that they are admitting that they did get a camera into the room where the boy was with the perpetrator, and so they were able to observe, and that the man did have a gun and was getting increasingly agitated. We knew that they were putting things down a pipe when they were talking to the kidnapper, and that eventually there were things that were requested that were too big to fit down the pipe, and so that there was like a hatch-like door in the top of the bunker that they were able to have arranged times when he would take things from them. They had an arranged time yesterday, that they were prepared. They had rehearsed what they were going to do. We know that they utilized flashbangs and that they were able to, well, the perpetrator lost his life, but they were able to get the boy out safely. I hope that he only saw a minimal amount of whatever happened, but the good news is that he's home, and so thrilled that he was talking and responding, and we know that he's going to turn 6 years old tomorrow. So thank you all of you for your prayers, and thank you to our wonderful law enforcement that we're able to get him out, not quickly, but safely. We're so happy about that. Okay, now we can go on and talk about everything else, which, takes a back seat to that. We talked the other day about when you have a fire in your kitchen, that's the first thing you have to take care of, and that was certainly beyond a fire in the kitchen. In any case, we are going to be with you live for the next 2 hours talking about autism and how you and I can be more efficient, more effective in all of our dealings, but especially if we're helping a child who's on the autism spectrum to reach their full potential, or if you are a young adult or a teenager or an adult on the autism spectrum, how you can overcome some of the more disabling aspects of the disorder to lead a happier, fuller life. That's what we talk about here. And we talk about autism from a full 360-degree perspective, what it's like, what the emotional toll is, what the financial toll is. There are a whole lot of things that go along with this journey, and so excited to be here and to have the opportunity to share that with you. I always like to remind all of you, I am not an expert in autism. I am not a legal expert. Clearly, I'm not an expert in law enforcement and saving hostages from my description that I just gave. But I am a mom of a child on the autism spectrum, and I'm a grateful mom who got a whole lot of help along the way, and I'm really here to pay it forward. You got to know that. So, and I want to be your conduit to the answers to the questions that you have, and sometimes to help you to find the questions to ask, if possible. We have a lot of experts that come in, and we appreciate you asking questions to ask them, because I can't even tell you how much they appreciate that too. They love to know that by making themselves available here that they've made a difference. So please participate, engage in the way that's comfortable for you. Emily's going to show you some of the different ways that you can connect with us here on the show to get the answers to your questions. And I want to remind all of you that there's only one way to watch us live, and that's www.autism-live.com. And when you go to that site, I got so many things I'm thinking about today. When you go to that site, you'll see a desktop, and there's a box there, and you can type whatever you want into that box, hit enter, and it shows up magically here on my screen when we're live. We are live from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States, and that would be 10 a.m. to noon Pacific Time, and then wherever you are in the world, you'll need to do the math on that. But we are live 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And the show will continue to play endlessly when you go to Autism-Live, but we are live those 2 hours, and we hope that you will participate with us. We really, yesterday, you guys did an outstanding job of participating, and it was really fun. We really enjoy it when you participate in that way. All right. It is time. Every morning we like to start out, I think of it as my morning workout, which is why I'm not in better shape. But I know my jargon. We call this jargon of the day. It's when we take one word, one phrase, one acronym, and try to shed some light on it, figure out what we're talking about with our individual children, so that we understand when experts are talking about these things, when we're reading articles about them. Okay, new jargon today. New jargon pretty much all this week, I believe. This one is blood-brain barrier. This is something that you're going to hear a lot when you're reading research, and really important for us to understand, and it will come into play as we move through the week here. So what is the blood-brain barrier? We always start out with our actual definition and then a working definition, so we can get a little closer to understanding. Okay, so our actual definition, it's a physiological mechanism that alters the permeability of the brain extracellular fluid in the central nervous system. Oy. Okay, some words. Okay, let's take a look at what our working definition is. I think I clicked the same thing. No, I'm wrong. Let's go back. Previous. I think we have the same for the working definition, but basically it's when there are certain medications that you can, and certain foods that will cross the blood-brain barrier, which means that it has an effect upon your nervous system. It has an effect upon how you're thinking and feeling. And a lot of people where this comes into play, especially with autism, is when you are talking to people, in particular medical professionals, about let's face it, there are lots of different people and they have lots of different specialties, right? And you might be talking to a pediatrician and saying to the pediatrician, well, I notice that when my child eats raspberries, that my child behaves in this and so way. And now you might be with a pediatrician who says, let's look at that, and maybe we want to do an allergy panel on the child to see whether it's something that they're allergic to, or something that they're sensitive to, or it could be that they're reacting to this and so in the raspberry and it's having this sort of an effect. And then you'll get pediatricians who go, well, clearly they're not allergic to the raspberry, because if they were, they would get hives and go into anaphylactic shock. So I'm sure it's nothing, it's just a coincidence, right? And you have to decide which kind of pediatrician you want to work with, right? But there are a great many people, even pediatricians and other medical professionals, who are not nutritionists and who don't specialize in this kind of chemistry, that will poo-poo that what you eat has an effect on how clearly you think. I don't know how in this day and age that can be, because we all understand that there are certain things that we can ingest that alter our state, our mental state. Beer, Let's start there. You drink a beer, you're not pouring it directly on your brain, but it certainly affects the way your brain functions, right? So is it crazy to think that if beer can do that, that there's the possibility that raspberries can do that to an individual child? And I'm picking on the raspberry today for no good reason, but because it's usually something that's considered innocuous. And there are a lot of things that are in our kids' diet that for a great many people, they are innocuous. I can eat peanut butter, but there are children who cannot only not eat peanut butter and survive. They can't even be in the room if I crack open a jar of peanut butter. So we know that different people have different sensitivities to substances. And what we do frequently, what we ingest, there are things that cross that blood-brain barrier. There are some medicines that cross the blood-brain barrier. And we want to start to become aware of what does and how it affects our individual children. I always say, I call my son that his little ecosystem, that he has going inside him, and that things throw it off. And there are things that don't throw anybody else off that I'm aware of, but they throw him off. And that's important to me as a parent. So I do want us all to think about ourselves first and how certain things, you get to a certain age, and I can always remember my Aunt Mick saying, I like onions, but onions don't like me. And I used to think, what does that mean? What on earth does that mean? And then, of course, I turned 30 and I understood what Aunt Mick meant, that I used to be able to eat onions, raw onions, and had no issue. Now I eat raw onions and I'm not a happy camper. So I don't eat a lot of raw onions anymore. Sometimes our kids can't tell us what's affecting them, whether it's a medication or being exposed to a certain something or something that they've eaten. So we kind of have to be scientists to start to put it together. But I do want you to realize that there are things that our children ingest that do cross the blood-brain barrier. I think that's the most important thing. All right, let's take a look. We always have a question of the day. Let's take a look at what our question of the day is. We've been talking about research this week, and we're going to continue to talk about research. And we didn't get a chance to drop in on your answers yesterday, but I can assure you we will today. But we want to know today, how does research influence your treatment decisions? I think this is a really important question, and I think it's a really important question to ask yourself. And I will be honest with you that as a parent, I thought it was really important. I wanted to know what was scientifically proven to be effective, that there were a lot of different choices that we had, and there are even more choices for you now, if you have a child on the autism spectrum, of how you want to spend your time, your energy, your money, and your hope, right? And I was a little overwhelmed by that. And I can remember sitting with my husband and saying, I don't know what to do. And we had sort of made this deal that I was going to be the chief cook and bottle washer where autism was concerned, that I was going to do research and I was going to come to him and present the research and then tell him what my gut said. And then together we would make our choices. But that I was going to be the chief researcher on this. I have a friend who, actually she's been on the show, Moira Giammatteo from TACA. She refers to it as the autism project manager, that every family has the autism project manager, and I love that term. In any case, there were several different things. I can think of 3 very distinct different treatment options that we had when our son started, and I do think that there are even more now. And we looked at them, and really the tipping point for me was 2 things. First of all, I saw the science, and I saw a couple of cases of individuals in all of the different scenarios of friends who had kids who had been treated with some of the other things, and I saw what their outcome was, which was not horrible, by the way. Their kids were very polite, and they had a means of communication, but the hope level in the parents was, this is all we're ever going to get. They had stopped pushing for progress. But when I met kids and parents who had or were having ABA, I didn't see a limit to that. I didn't see where they were saying, well, we're done. This is as far as our child will get. And that excited me. And that, paired with the fact that the science was there to show me that it was effective, was really what made us put our eggs in the ABA basket and said, we are going to make sure that we make room for this in our lives. 40 hours. I've had opportunity to talk to 3 different families in the last week who've talked about 40 hours. Whew, that's a lot. That's a crazy amount of hours. And in all cases, I said, yes, it absolutely is. And believe me, it's hard, but do it. Do it anyway. Do it. You will never be sorry. You will never be sorry that you invested that in your child. And that is honestly how I feel. But the science is there. The science is there to show that there's reason to do that. Aside from my mother's gut, aside from looking at other people's children and going, wow, I want to see that in my life. And aside from seeing the hope in those parents and the progress, the science is there to show it. And that really made a difference for me. But I'd love to hear from you guys to see how, what is the thing? I do believe that your gut has to be informing you as well. But what role does the research and the science play in the choices that you make? Would love to know that. Okay, we always have a topic of the week, and obviously our topic this entire week, a great topic I might add, is autism research. And we're not only talking about research that has happened in the past, but research we want to see in the future. Yesterday we had Dr. Jonathan Tarbox with us. He's the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, but he's also the director of the Autism Research Group, a really amazing organization that looks to parents to inform them about the kinds of choices that they would like to see made in autism research. Things that are substantive to us today, because let's face it, sometimes it's frustrating. We see research, millions of dollars of research being done for things that aren't what we would have picked, right? They just aren't what we would have picked. So we will continue to talk about autism research today while we talk about a whole host of other things, including this morning we've got a healthy eating tip for you, one that I guarantee you is going to rock your boat a little bit and make you a little bit angry at me, but that's okay. And you'll see why in a few minutes. We're going to talk about challenging behavior because it's something that crops up and it's something that we need to be hopeful about because we can change it. And then during the second hour today, it's time for Making Room with Evelyn Gould, who is a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst, will be with us to talk about autism research and a whole host of other things. We're very excited to have her with us at the top of the next hour and more, and always answering your questions. Top priority. You guys wrote great questions yesterday for Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. Keep them coming because Evelyn Gould will be with us in the next hour. You can send your questions now and we'll get them lined up. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, it's time for that healthy eating tip. Stick with us.
Every child with autism deserves a bright future.
Without further clarification, the Affordable Care Act could actually result in less benefits for individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
We urge Catherine Sebelius to clarify the Affordable Health Care Act.
She can make one change, one little minor change, to make applied behavioral analysis be part of the health care plan.
By signing this petition, you are protecting the healthcare benefits of individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
We need to make sure
that we are heard
and seen.
Sign a petition at autism-live.com.
Here's how you can show your infinite support. Create your own infinity ribbon.
What you're gonna do is take a ribbon that's been cut about 8 inches long, and you're gonna grab one end and then twist it, and then take the two ends and join them together, and then tape it together. And then I'm gonna flip it around and take another piece of tape. And what I have is double-sided sticky tape. Squeeze down. You have your very own infinity ribbon.
With ABA.
The possibilities are infinite.
With ABA,
The possibilities are infinite.
With ABA,
The possibilities are infinite.
With ABA.
The possibilities are infinite.
With ABA,
The possibilities are infinite.
with ABA,
The possibilities are infinite.
Welcome back to Autism Live. It's that time of the week when we give you a healthy eating tip, or as I like to say, I make you mad at me. I have a niece who will say to me, please don't tell me anything else about what I should or shouldn't be eating. Please leave me alone. I don't want to know, right? And I get it, because sometimes we get some information and it changes everything, and it's not always easy. I do understand that, but information is power, right? And it occurred to me that we haven't talked about artificial food colors and flavors for a while. Oh, I know. Who wants to talk about that? Our children love to eat those things that are day glow, and everybody likes to go to the birthday party where they have that cake that's black and blue and green and orange, and I personally love to take pictures after the kids have been digging into the cake and they've got the black lips and the orange tongue. They're hilarious pictures. And then I like to go home right as the kids start to descend into horrible behavior. And by the way, I'm talking about completely neurotypical kids. You can almost set your clock to it that it's going to happen. So let's talk a little bit about artificial food colors and why you might want to consider minimizing them in your diet and in your child's diet. And we're going to post on Facebook a little bit later on today. There's a great blog that's called Healing Autism and ADHD that a friend of mine writes, Joanne Allor. And I call her my biomed mom because she is a good friend of mine, and she's a person that I call, pretty much the person I call when I have questions about things that I'm not going to talk to my son's doctor about, because she's an incredibly knowledgeable person, has a great sense of humor, and is a great writer. And she wrote a blog a couple of years ago that was titled Food Coloring is Evil. And so we're going to share that with you on our Facebook page so you can take a look at it. And I always learn from Joanne, but one of the things that I learned in reading this particular blog that really shook me to my core and made me go, wait a second, I don't think I'm looking at this exactly right. And not to say, I was already sort of on the no artificial color, no artificial food flavorings. In any case, I read her blog and I went, oh, this is ever so much more serious than I thought it was, because I was not aware of the fact that there are many other countries in the world who have already banned a wide range of these artificial food colorings and flavors that the United States is still allowing. That for many years, the food coloring has been banned in those other countries. Really makes you stop and wonder, and that there are companies that manufacture food both in the United States and for other countries, and they have different practices for how they deliver those items, and that, for instance, there might be pancakes that have blueberries in them, and in other countries they will make sure that they put actual blueberries in, whereas in the United States they are not forced to. So legally they don't have to, so they don't. They put in different things, artificial food colors and flavors that have an effect upon our children. They're petroleum-based. And I want you to stop and consider, we've seen this incredible rise in all kinds of different things that affect our children and their attention, all right? We're going to put those all under the umbrella of things that can make it harder for our kids to be able to do what they need to do. It could be autism, it could be ADHD, a whole host of other things, right? And when you think about in 1950, when we weren't seeing as much prevalence of those things, and I'm not saying that they are the be-all, end-all cause, but when we look at environmental causes, is this adding to it? It's a good question. In the 1950s, when a child got up in the morning, they had a breakfast that did not have artificial food color and artificial flavor in it. They went to school, they had a lunch that did not have artificial food color and artificial flavor in it. Then they would come home and maybe they had a snack. Rarely did it have artificial food color or flavor in it. They would have dinner, very little artificial food color or flavor, and then they would have a dessert. It was typical. I mean, I was a child, I grew up in the 60s and the 70s, and we had dessert after every single dinner. We just did. It was a thing that we did. And I talk about sugar and other people talk about sugar, and sugar might be contributing, but it still didn't have the artificial food color in it. Now when we send a child, first they have breakfast in the morning, and frequently they're having a dose of artificial food color or flavor. I got so excited, I got a hot flash here talking about this. Then they go to school, they go to lunch, and generally they're having artificial food color and flavor. They come home, have a snack, artificial food color, flavor. They have dinner, maybe not as much when they have dinner, but then if there is a snack or dessert afterwards, it's almost guaranteed, unless it has been made completely from scratch by the person at home, it is almost guaranteed to have artificial food color and flavor in it. It's so much more. If we were to measure how much in the last 50 years, 60 years that children have, it is shocking. It's almost impossible to buy candy anymore unless you go to a specialty store, and they do have it at specialty stores, but it's almost impossible to get candy in the United States that doesn't have artificial food color and flavor in it. And we have seen this rise of all kinds of inability to attend. Something to think about. And I know a great many friends who have kids that are not on the spectrum that they've been able to identify, okay, this artificial food coloring, just one of them, is what sets my child off. It's worth it to take a look. It's worth it to wean your child off of it. And if you feel the need to reintroduce colors, but note behaviors that you get after they are exposed to these things. As I said, they're petroleum-based. They're not healthy for us or for our kids. It really behooves us to limit or eliminate when we can. Making good choices, you know, it's hard. It's really hard, but if it ultimately leads to a child who can attend, I don't know a single parent who isn't concerned about that and doesn't want their child to be able to attend. It's what makes the difference in them learning and being compliant and being happy. So consider it. Artificial food colors, artificial flavors, bye-bye. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we have, I think we're going to take a look at the answers to your question of the day. Stick with us. Currently in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism, my beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're gonna take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
It just has some gases.
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christina Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana.
We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable and recovery from autism is possible.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We ask you a question every day, and yesterday we didn't get a chance to look at your answers to the question of the day, so I want to start with that because this is I think a really important question. Our question yesterday was, what kind of research on autism would you like to see done? And some really interesting stuff here, and I love how the discussion starts. But somebody wrote in and said that they would like to have research done on the autism rate among vaccinated versus non-vaccinated, and how biomed helps versus using only traditional therapies. You know, there are some studies that are out there, and hopefully we'll be able to bring some of them to your attention in the coming weeks. Somebody else who said they'd like to see some study done on stem cell therapy, and you know that there is right now a study that's been approved by the CDC that they're in Arizona. They're doing a very controlled study on stem cell therapy. So we'll look forward to hearing about the results of that. Another person says, what sections of the brain are impacted by autism? Can the functions of those areas be retrained? And if not, can other sections of the brain take over? I know there is an answer out there somewhere. And, you know, I'm bummed that we had Dr. Jonathan Tarbox on yesterday, but maybe I can get somebody else to address this that's an expert later on in this week. But there is an answer out there about that. There have been a couple of recent studies done where they were doing brain imaging along with therapy, and what we're starting to see is that there are very definitely parts of the brains that are affected, and that ABA is effectively retraining them. So pretty incredible research, and with an image. I'm a visual girl, so with an image to go of the brain, what it looks like before ABA, and the brain, what it looks like afterwards, and different things are lighting up. It's very exciting. Another person who wrote in, and it's a really lengthy post, so I'm not going to talk about all of it, but a discussion has begun this is on the Center for Autism and Related Disorders Facebook page, about one mom wrote in and said, that they believe that it is a lack of oxygen either in the womb or when the child is first born, that there is some form of lack of oxygen, and that in her individual experience that her child had his umbilical cord around his neck. And another mom writes in and says, same thing happened to her child. And I think that's really interesting, and obviously more research needs to be done about that. But I want to point out that what we've learned is that there are many different types of autism. And it appears that there are likely different triggers to the different types of autism. What excites me, I'll be really honest with you, is that someday, they're working on it, great minds are working on it, but someday we're going to be able to phenotype autism definitively and be able to say, okay, here is this type of autism, which is brought on by an onset of some oxygen incident, and here's what we do to treat it, and here's how we can be of most benefit to this particular section of our community. Then here's this form of autism, which is a regressive type that seems to be brought on by X, Y, and Z environmental. And here's what we do to treat this to be the most effective to get the best possible outcome. And here's this type of autism that seems to start at birth but is not caused by an oxygen incident that is caused by X, Y, or Z. And here's how we treat this, and so on and so forth down the line. I always think about cancer and how in my great-grandmother's day there was cancer, and it was just a one-word thing, and it meant that you had cells growing in your body that were attacking your body, and, you know, go dig a hole because there's nothing we could do for you. Clearly, that is not the case now. A little more than 100 years later, now we have cancers, and we know, well, this type of cancer that attacks these cells, it's large cell, it's slow growing, this is what works against this. And here's this other type of cancer that it seems to metastasize to this organ, and here's how we treat this effectively. That's what I want to see for autism, and that is the direction that we're moving in. And when we get there, it's, you know, our community, I think, is going to stop fighting, because everybody has their experience, and they go, well, this is what's happening. Isn't this what's happening for everybody else? And it isn't. And we will start to be able to get really good research, because we'll be able to look at, just does this type of therapy help this type of autism. Really looking forward to seeing the biomedical leap that happens when we can phenotype autism. And also, the mom who originally wrote in said that they would love to be working in the field of autism. She said, I wish someday I could have a job that has something to do with autism, or to help or with autistic children, because I really want to be a part of this journey and help out with it. And do anything that I possibly can. And they go on to say, and I would move wherever. I gotta tell you that they're always looking for more therapists. We need an army of therapists to do ABA, and they need BCBAs. In a crazy, crazy way, they need BCBAs all over the world. You want to talk about job security, become a BCBA. And you can go to behavioral therapy. It's iBehavioral. I'm going to check it. Why can't I remember the name of this website? I'm going to get it for you. But iBehavioral training, that's what it is. And if you go there, ibehavioraltraining.com, you can begin the process of being able to be a therapist. It's really amazing. And you don't have to already have degrees to start. They will get you trained. Anyway, another person who says oxygen injury, and that they agree that it has something to do. But again, that's one particular kind of autism. Somebody else answering the question about what kind of research would you like to see done says how to fully support kids so when they are adults, they can continue to be supported and fully successful. I agree. Somebody else who said their son was cesarean and did not lack oxygen. So here's an example of it's not everyone. But they go on to say that their child was diagnosed in October. They're 3. They say, my son is very smart and sweet, but I can't say he's a genius, and at 3, I couldn't have said that about my child. I do now. I don't know that I'm allowed to, but I do. He is genius. Some kids with autism are geniuses, but some can barely do simple things, and that is true. But at 3, I would tell you, don't decide yet, because he might surprise you. I pray for a cure one day becomes available for those who struggle with speech. And, I know cure is a word that gets everybody a little up in arms, but I hope that they find the answer to the speech puzzle for all of our kids as well. Okay, I'm trying to read. I don't know what in the world they are doing to this child, but our child couldn't get a diagnosis of autism until he was 3. And that really was the case for a long time. There were doctors who would say, we don't diagnose until 3. That's not the case anymore. That is not the case anymore. They are diagnosing as early as I have heard of a case where they diagnosed at 15 months. And there's a reason why you wanted to do that, because we know. Talk about autism research, the science is in, and we know that as soon as we start, that we're going to have the best possible outcome. It just makes sense. If you're catching a child up and they haven't gotten that far behind, your likelihood of reaching success is much better. So there are people who are without a diagnosis, starting at 12 months, doing therapeutic techniques with children that are never getting a diagnosis because they don't need it, because they didn't get behind. It's a little exciting. So do know that they are diagnosing much earlier. I know when my son was 2.5, he got a diagnosis, and people were like, oh, I didn't know you could do that before 3. And that was 7 years ago. So it changes. It changes over time. Another person says they would like to see research done on sleep issues. And I'm going to forward that over to our friends at the Autism Research Group. We've got a NICU nurse who wrote in and talked about the oxygen at birth. really some interesting stuff, a rather long post, so I'll leave it to you guys if you want to read that. Somebody else wants to know, the research that they want to do is what is going on in the brain and how can we can we rewire it to a more typical-minded brain. And I said they're starting to do those brain imaging things with ABA and looking at before ABA and after ABA and seeing that different parts of the brain light up. It's kind of exciting. Lots of people writing in about lack of oxygen and epilepsy, loving that. You guys support each other. It's a really important thing. And somebody who says, what I would like to see done is take as much money and put it into life skills and residential things. The kids that are out there today are going to be adults someday with no place to go. It's absolutely true. And you know, there are more and more people who are putting money into this. I mentioned the other day on the show that there was a huge donation that 2 families got together and made a huge donation to create a new chair at University of New Jersey and Rutgers, and it is for the purpose of helping to train teenagers and young adults on the autism spectrum, to give them college educations and to be able to train them to do jobs, because we want them to be productive members of society. Our kids are going to be adults one day, and we do need to prepare for that future. I know I wanted to go over to our Autism Live site because we post these questions on both sites, on the Center for Autism and Related Disorders and on Autism Live. And somebody wrote, and I think this is really typical, and actually there were a lot of people who wrote in about this and said, in answer to their question, how does research influence your treatment decisions? They said, not really, not sure really. I feel like there isn't much research out there. I have just tried a bit of everything, which I feel that a lot of parents of kids with autism do. You go the usual route of various therapies that are available to us and hope for the best. Somebody else, so that was today's question. Somebody else had said, I feel overwhelmed, that it makes me shut down when, and that was on the other site. I also wanted to share from this site, because people wrote in on what kind of research on autism would you like to see done. Somebody wrote, any link to autism and traumatic birth, vacuum, shoulder, dystocia, I'm not familiar with that word, forceps use, etc. Large size baby, etc. I think that would be really interesting to read about too. I had a very large baby, but he was born C-section. Over 10 pounds. Yes, a large boy. Somebody else says that they would like research done on radiation and other metals and magnetic pollution in our atmosphere starting from the 1800s present, and how it has been affecting neurological development. That certainly would be of interest to a lot of us. I know when we had our first set of labs done on our son, he came back extremely high in aluminum, which was a very interesting thing to me. And I had to ask myself, where is this coming from? And I would certainly love to know still to this day. Could come from a lot of different places, but would love to check that out. All right, a lot of really exciting stuff. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about challenging behavior. Stick with us.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, Find specific activities to assess and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back. We want to talk a little bit about challenging behavior right now. And last week we talked about antecedent modification. And in case those words are sounding overwhelming to you, want to give you a little refresher course. We talk about the ABCs of behavior, that the A is the antecedent, it's what happens before the behavior. The B is the behavior, the C is the consequence for the behavior. Everything that we do in life, we do because we want a paycheck, right? And the paycheck comes, everything that we do repeatedly, let's be clear about that, because sometimes you just do something the first time and it doesn't go well and you go, I'm not going to do that again, right? But especially when we have challenging behavior, it's challenging because it happens again and again and again. And it feels random to us as parents. Sometimes it even feels random to the person who's doing it. But if something's happening over and over and over again, there is some sort of paycheck for it. And when we look at the behavior, we pull it apart to those ABCs. The experts call it the 3-term contingent. But we don't have to worry about that. We have to worry about the ABCs and understanding what they are. A, antecedent, what happened before. B, behavior. C, consequence. Okay. And we've talked before about antecedent modifications, that sometimes if we see that a behavior is happening over and over and over again, once we look at it and we have an expert tell us what the function of the behavior is, we can do something before the behavior happens to ensure that the behavior is less likely to occur. We talked a little bit yesterday about when people are attention driven, that if we know that somebody is really motivated by attention and attention is really reinforcing to them, and it comes as a consequence for behavior that they've done, if they're yelling and people pay attention, then they got the paycheck. The consequence was they got what they wanted. They got attention. And remember, with attention, doesn't matter whether it's good or bad, it's still reinforcing if you're really truly driven by attention and you're desperate. Of course, you'd rather have good attention, but if you're not getting good attention, bad attention will be a payoff. Okay, so we do things and we do this all the time, even without knowing we're doing it. We alter things to set ourselves up for something to be more likely to happen or less likely to happen. That's an antecedent modification. We get up with our children and we feed them, partially because it's a way of showing love and we know that it's important for them to eat, but you know, sometimes other things happen and we still find the time to feed our children because we know that if we have our child get over hungry, what's going to happen? We're going to get behavior, right? So antecedent modification, we make sure that they eat. Sometimes with little kids especially, we make sure that they eat every couple of hours so that they don't get crabby and emotional and acting out. That's an antecedent modification. It's taking what's happening before and changing something to make sure that you're building towards success. success. And we've talked about that in recent weeks. And I promised we would talk about consequence strategies, consequence modifications, so that we make sure that we, A, give paychecks where we want the paychecks, and B, don't give paychecks for behaviors we don't want to see. Okay, so what's an example of a behavior that we want to see more of? When our child speaks. When our child appropriately uses language to get something that they want, so requesting or manding. We want to make sure that when the child mans, they get huge reinforcement, right? And that means pairing with the mand, when they request something, any time that a small child or a child who is acquiring language, no matter what age they are, requests something, if it's at all possible and if at all healthy, we want to make sure that we give it to them as close to immediately as we possibly can, and we pair social praise with that. So the child says dog because they've got a stuffed dog that they absolutely love. They say dog or doggy, and we go, yes, good talking, and give them the dog. Now, clearly, we're not mind readers, so we don't always know what they're going to ask for, but paying attention to and rewarding and praising and giving them what they ask for when it's appropriate, really key, as much as possible, as timely as possible. If you have to say, good talking, let's go get the doggy, and take them to go get the doggy, great, right? Because that's really what they want. Okay, what's the flip of this? We see sometimes that children engage in behavior to get a response from us, and it's really hard not to give the response, right? But sometimes the response is the paycheck. Tough. And really ideal that we're working with an expert who can identify for us and say the function of this behavior is fill in the blank. Because let's imagine for a second that the function of the behavior is attention. That our consequence strategy may involve something called extinction, which means we're going to cut the behavior off from the paycheck. No more paycheck. Tough, very tough to do. But so if the behavior was spitting, and we know from the expert that it's attention fed. This is attention-driven spitting. The child spits and you go, oh, that's disgusting, don't do that. And they're loving the attention. We're absolutely going to put in an antecedent modification in hopes that we don't get the spitting, right? We're going to give a whole lot of attention beforehand. But if that doesn't work, or we mess it up and we don't give the attention and the spitting happens, we have a consequence intervention in place called extinction. It means the child spits and we don't say anything. We don't do anything. We don't raise our eyebrows. We don't give them the look. My mother was so good at the look. You're right? And we don't give them the lecture about, hey, we talked about this. There's no more spitting, because that's attention. And if it's attention-driven, not going to help. So what we do instead, the child spits and we're busy occupied with something, doing something. And as soon as they're not spitting, and we got to wait maybe 10 seconds, and they're not spitting, and maybe even in that second we're not giving a whole lot of attention, but we give them an opportunity to do something else, and we say, hey, did you want to watch something with me? And the child says yes. And then we shower the attention and go, yeah, good answering. I'm so glad that you're coming with me to do this. But we didn't react to the spitting. The spitting didn't get the job done. And we made sure that there was a big enough pause so that the child doesn't link these two things up together. Super duper important. That's a consequence strategy. And what we see is if we do it properly and wait the proper amount of time after the spitting and don't attend to the spitting, the child stops spitting. Now, I say that to you in the way that I say it because as a parent, it's humbling. It's humbling because it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like it should work, but it does. Oh, it's just crazy how well it works. Key though, that we know that it was attention driven. Key that we wait the proper amount of time, and that we do not ever, if possible, attend to, now that does not mean ignore the child. That means don't attend to the behavior. We're just busy occupied with something else, looking, oh, here's my mouse, and you can be really ridiculous about it. I used to go and water the plants in the house, and I would have to talk to myself and go, oh, this plant is so lovely because it feels counterintuitive. That's exactly what it feels like, counterintuitive. Okay, let's imagine that the expert comes back and says the spitting is escape maintained because you put a demand on your child and you asked them to do something and your child started to spit. And now you're having to clean up the child and clean up the spit, and the child got that 30-second, 1-minute window of time that they didn't have to do the thing that they wanted to do. So you might put it on extinction and say to yourself, okay, you mistook it and thought it was attention because the attention of wiping and whatever seemed like attention. And so your brilliant mind is thinking, okay, there's an attention component to this. But that isn't what was maintaining it. It was the escape. So instead, you've put it on extinction thinking that's attention, and you're not attending to it and you're busy with your pencils. Guess what? They still got that break. They still got the escape from it. And instead of cutting it off from the supply, you just fed it the supply of reinforcement. This is why I always say it's so important that you make sure that you're working with an expert and that you know. These are great tools, but until you know what you're doing with them, you have the potential to make it worse. But if the expert comes in and says this is escape maintained, what it means now is that you are going to give a whole bunch of attention, because if you ask the child to do something, let's say you ask them to do their homework and they spit, you're not even going to stop to clean it up off of anything. You're not going to address the spitting, but you are going to make sure that they are doing their homework in that second, even if you were having to put hand over hand and writing on the paper. And I say that example because it wasn't spitting. My son used to fall off of his chair when it came time for homework. Oh, can I tell you? My blood pressure boils even thinking about it. He would sit up to, and this was in, I think it was first grade. He would sit up, and kindergarten was fine. We did homework. He loved it. First grade, I would set him up at the table. He'd be sitting there to do his homework, and he's at the right angle for his little arm, and he would just go spaghetti legs and fall out of his chair onto the living room rug, which was next to the dining room, just, and it was civil disobedience. He did not want to do the homework. And I tried all kinds of different things. I tried stepping over his body, and finally we had our people come in, our therapists, and they were like, this is escape maintained. I see it clearly now. I sure didn't at the time. And so what I started doing is, so he would fall onto the floor, and we only had to do this once. It was one afternoon and life changed, right? And it looked a little ridiculous, but he fell onto the floor, and I would very quickly take the paper, stick it under, take the pencil, put it in his hand, and continue as if he were writing the sentence for him. And I wouldn't comment on it or anything, but he did not get to escape it, even while he was laying on the floor. And I didn't say, hey, don't fall. None of that, right? We just went on with the task. And he quickly saw that falling onto the floor did not mean that he got a break from the homework. We taught him the replacement skill that he could ask for a break, that he could say, Mom, can I have a 5-minute break? And, then we had to work on getting him back to the table after the 5 minutes, right? Because my child he doesn't want to be a lawyer, but he should be, because he can negotiate the pants off of anything. So, But understanding, because your consequence has to be effective, and you have to know the function of the behavior in order to know what's effective. So consequence strategies, antecedent strategies, amazing the difference that it can make. And again, one time I had to do that, and then he has never thrown himself on the floor again doing homework. Thank goodness, because it was really annoying. All right. In any case, I digress. But we love our kids. So I put it out there to you to consider what are the ABCs, and also to consult with an expert, a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism and has experience with the type of challenging behavior that you're facing. And you can ask them those questions, and they will answer you truthfully. They're licensed, and so they have need to answer you truthfully. All right. we are going to go to the A word now. I want to remind all of you that this is the wonderful documentary being made by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, an ongoing documentary following a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. At this point in the series, he's been having therapy for about 8 months. And we see that there are so many things that Jack Riley is learning, but some of them are difficult. And by the way, this is a difficult thing for the family as well. You want to talk intrusive, having a whole bunch of people come into your house and working with your child. I don't know. Is there anything that gets more intrusive than that? But it's worth it. It's worth it. So let's take a look. This is the A word.
We skipped a few in the middle, didn't we, love? Jack Riley likes to watch videos about the ABCs, or the ABBCs, as he likes to say. He kept throwing a fit and misbehaving when he wasn't getting what he wanted. We finally decided it was time to turn off the computer. And of course we did that without warning him.
He threw one of the biggest tantrums I've ever seen from him, because he's used to getting his way now, because now that he can say it, we're supposed to reward him. But now he's testing us.
While we are 100% ABA advocates and we believe it is working on our son, there is a little fallout in reinforcing these requests that he doesn't quite understand now that he doesn't get everything he wants.
Bye-bye! This is completely typical. When requesting isn't something that happens naturally with your child, you want to create as many opportunities to practice the skill. So you reinforce each time they request, because it will increase the frequency they demand. Once the requests are at a rate you want, then you should begin to fade the frequency of reinforcement and teach new advanced skills, such as having the child wait for a desired item or let them know that they must choose something else. These are all life skills. Not every desire will be met, but you are more likely to get what you want if you communicate your wants appropriately.
You want some applesauce, buddy?
Yeah, why don't we get the car over here, bud?
Let's take the car. We're just gonna take a break. Take a break. Take a break. Do you want this? Do you want the car?
Do you want more car?
Settle down. Settle down.
Okay,
Settle
do you
down.
want more car? Okay, and you want applesauce? Okay. All right, take another bite. One more. There you go.
Nice, that was a good
Okay.
bite too, buddy.
There you go.
Good bite.
All right. Yeah, I should have warned him before I took it away.
We get reminded all the time. It just works so well.
It does, it really
and then
does,
you forget
yeah.
to do it. And
Okay, 10 more seconds and bye-bye car, okay? Bye-bye car. 10 okay. Okay, let me have it. Bye-bye car. No, that's okay, settle down.
Thank you.
Take two bites, please. Do you want the car?
Yes.
Two bites. Good talking.
One, and then
good
two.
job. Good job, buddy.
Good job.
Good job. Good job.
How has mealtime been going with you? Still the same? Still
Yeah, it's
pretty
going
good?
well. Yeah, you know what he had last night? Did Cheryl tell you?
No.
We are documenting this because this bite of spaghetti that he's about to take is the first ever meal that Jack Riley has had exactly what Mommy and Daddy are having. With the exception of the cottage cheese. He would eat that too, but we're going slow. I realize it's just spaghetti, and lots of kids probably eat spaghetti, but our kid never did. Not for us, anyway. And now, he's like just a regular kid having dinner with Mom and Dad.
Good morning. Say choo-choo. Choo-choo. Say here we go. Here you go. All right, make it go down. Go down. Whee! Yay! Good job. Should we build more tracks? Okay, sure. Here you go. Do you want the green one or the blue one? Green. I want what trees? You want which one? Black. You want black? Oh, well, none of the ones I offered you. Cool. I like that. I like it. And he's definitely requesting more eating and drinking, which is really good to hear. So I don't know if they want to introduce him to other things. Like, it's up to them. But just the fact that he's requesting to drink is a big deal for him. Hey, Jack, one more minute, okay? Say, okay. 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 He has an issue sometimes, like inflexibility a little bit, with just the trains in particular. When I'll ask him to come over to do a program real quick, he'll want to clean up the trains up every single time. With the other toys though, like I can call him over, he can take a break, he's totally fine, and then after we're done with that program, he'll go back and he'll play. With the trains in particular, I don't know why he wants to clean them up every single time. So I'll run some programs and we'll see if he has that issue still. Hey, Jack. Good looking. Come here. Yeah, that's such good listening. Good job, mister. What is this? What are those? Papa. No, what are these? Papa. What's this? What's this one? Ears. Yay! There you go. Ears. Very good, kiddo. Hey, look at me. Hey, look over. Yay! There you go. What are these? Fingers. Good job. What are... Mouth. Yeah. What's this? Head. Head. Very good. Okay, one more sticker. What are these? Fingers. Good job. All right. Yeah, that transition was a lot better. Where's Piglet?
He's a very cute little boy. That is Jack Riley, and that is the A Word. You can watch this entire series on their Facebook channel. We're showing you that site right now. And I just wanted to talk for a brief second about, I love the part where the mom is talking about how they're capturing it for posterity, that they're filming this moment when he's taking this bite of spaghetti, and she says, you know, I realize that to a lot of people this would not be a big deal, but it's kind of a big deal to us because other kids just did this and our child didn't. And two things I want to say about that. It's so important to videotape. And videotape early and videotape as much as you can. And I will tell you that it's for a bunch of different reasons. When your kid is neurotypical, right, you videotape because these moments pass and you never get them again, and our kids grow so fast, right? When your child is on the autism spectrum, I think there are times when we stop videotaping, we put the camera down because it's hard. And I do think, for me anyway, there was a moment when I said, I don't want to remember this. I don't want to be able to look back to this. And I'm sorry about that now. I'm sorry about that for a lot of different reasons. I'm sorry because I do want to look back now. Now that we're not there, I do want to look back and see it, and I want to be able to point to it to other people and say, you see, and I have a little bit of that, but I didn't videotape tantrums because I see other people, like on America's Funniest Home Video, will videotape their child's tantrums, and they're laughing in the background like, this is hilarious, because they recognize it as a normal part of growing up, and I didn't, because it didn't seem like it was normal, and I didn't know that it was never going to end. I want to share with you that it can end, and so it's okay to videotape it. It's okay to preserve it for posterity. You won't be sorry if you do. And to be able to look back and go, look at what they did and look at what they're doing now, I think adds to our personal reinforcement. So I do want you I want to encourage you to videotape as much as you possibly can. You're going to need it later on. Your child will appreciate it later on, and it might be something that's useful to the world at large later on. So I encourage you to get out that video camera, and even if you're crying while you're videotaping, or set it on the counter and videotape things, you won't be sorry that you did, really. And the other thing that I want to say is that we don't have to apologize for appreciating the small things. We don't have to. And, you know, other people might think it's weird, but I have said from the beginning that, you know, One of the nicer things about autism was that it put me in a position where I was forced to recognize daily miracles. And that when my child was able to do something that random people had said that he wouldn't do or probably couldn't ever do, it was a miracle. And when any of our kids start to speak and converse, it is a miracle. We just don't recognize it on a daily basis because we've been taught to take it for granted. And when that's taken away, we do get to recognize it. And that is something I don't think any of us would ever ask for, but it is amazing, and we should celebrate it. Celebrating all the little steps is a great thing about being on the journey through autism. So don't feel bad about it. Don't poo-poo it. Enjoy it and celebrate it. It is a very big deal that he's eating pasta with his parents and sitting there and that there isn't a tantrum. It's a huge deal. And so I encourage you to, if there's somebody you feel like you have to apologize to it for, don't bother. You have my permission. No more apologies. When our kids make progress, it is huge. It is fabulous, and it's never small. It isn't. So that's my little 2 cents today. And he is making progress, and I do encourage you to watch the full gamut of episodes that are available to you on their YouTube channel for the A Word. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Evelyn Gould. I am looking at the questions that you guys are sending in. We're going to sort through and figure out which ones we're going to answer today and which ones we'll add to the mix for Ask Dr. Doreen tomorrow. So stick with us.
Hi everyone, welcome back. For the month of February, I thought it'd be a great idea to work on an activity that would help your kiddos identify and label emotions. And to help me out today is my good friend, Jamie.
Hey, Suzanne.
Hey there, Jamie.
Hey, how can I help?
Well, the way you can help me out is that because you're a sock puppet, you can do things with your face that I cannot do.
No way.
Totally. The way you can do it is that, you have interchangeable features, which means you can make super exaggerated faces, which makes it easier for kiddos to identify them and to label them.
Uh-huh.
Hey, I have a favor to ask you.
Yeah?
Can you help us out and show us some of your faces you can make?
Of course. Here we go.
Ooh, you look super mad.
I was super mad.
Can you show us another one?
Sure.
Ooh, you look super sad.
I was super sad.
All right, can you show us one more?
One more.
All right. You look super excited.
I was super excited.
I am too. You know why? Because I really want to show everyone how to make a little buddy like you. So let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are googly eyes, felt, a hot glue gun, imagination, scissors, Velcro, some heavy cardstock, and a clean sock. All right, let's get to it. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to grab your sock. Hopefully it's not dirty and used. It's a clean one. And what you're going to do is that you're going to take your sock, fold it in half like so, and then you're going to take your scissors and cut down. The reason we're doing this is that we're going to make an area for the mouth. The next thing you want to do is you want to trim the inside a little bit, because if you don't, it's going to have an overbite. So I'm just going to take my scissors and just trim a little bit off, not much. Now that this guy is ready, I'm going to take a hard cardstock or note card or whatever you have that's a piece of paper. I'm going to fold it in half. And what I'm going to do with this is going to be the inside of its mouth, the kind of reinforcement so you're able to move its mouth around. So I'm going to just cut it into an oval. And don't worry, if it's a little too big, you can always trim it. With this sock puppet project, the materials we'll be using, like the hot glue, is not something for children. So this is something you're going to be doing by yourself and then asking your child to join in once the puppet is ready to go. All right, now that I got that out of the way, let's start gluing. I'm going to take my hot glue gun and I'm going to glue it on the paper. Okay, once I have that, I'm going to put that in the inside of its mouth, and then I'm going to take the sock and then pull it over the edge and cover it with the glue. All right, so now that I have the bottom part done, I'm going to do the same thing to the top. So now that we have this part assembled, what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of felt and we're going to cover this area so you don't see all the scraggly stuff. So I have my piece of felt right here. I'm gonna fold it in half and I'm just gonna cut out a similar oval shape. And again, don't worry if it's too big, you can always trim it after we glue it on. I'm gonna glue it inside. All right, now we got pretty much the base of the sock puppet. He's got a moving mouth, but wait, he's got no features. We gotta help him out with that. So what I'm gonna do is I have these pieces of Velcro that I bought that are already sticky on the back, which makes my life a lot easier. And I'm gonna peel this off and place it where I want his eyes. So one there, and one there. And then I'm also gonna put them also along his mouth. And then if you want to get fancy, you can put some for his eyebrows as well. So now that I have this, we should be making some features for him.
I'm alive! Alive!
I had a great time with my buddy Jamie, and I hope you did too. Until next time, bye.
Bye. And don't forget to send us your photos at facebook.com/autismlive.
Can you see me? Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here right now with a very special guest, Evelyn Gould. It's time for Making Room with Evelyn. She is a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst specializing in autism, and you have a great deal of experience working with children on the autism spectrum. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
We love it when you're here. We had a bunch of different questions that came in, and we want to start with, we were talking before you came in today about attention and how sometimes children will be driven for attention and we give them the paycheck and we don't mean to sometimes. So I just wanted to reference that for some of the language in this question. The question is, my child has a one-on-one aide who keeps him engaged in his inclusion classroom. How will he ever be weaned from this aide due to the paycheck of having an adult's one-on-one attention? Is there a proven method of doing this? He's had an aide now for 4 years in public school. Okay, so and I should say, let's start with a disclaimer that all kids are different. Hard to know just from the things that you guys write in a sentence, so we never pretend that we're giving child-specific advice here, but talking in generalities about fading an aid.
Well, I mean, also, all aides are different.
Yes, so, absolutely. And how they approach a child, and each classroom and each teacher and all the kids surrounding them are going to be different. Exactly. So lots of variables.
So, I mean, this is a problem that we have to deal with every single kid that we work with that has an aide in school that then starts to become more independent, or we feel that they should be becoming more independent, and they are basically or their funding, runs out. Whatever the reason is, we have to fade the aide away.
Yeah.
Generally, when I've been working with aides in school and I'm the consultant, I am trying to kind of think about that from the beginning.
Yes.
And so I would do a lot of training with the aide in terms of how to try and get independent responses, like how to get the kid to do things a bit more independently and not becoming prompt dependent or dependent on constant like nagging, or which is basically just another form of attention. And really what you're looking at is, if your child has been having this one-to-one aid constantly and just constant prompting and constantly somebody over their shoulder, and they're really dependent on that person being there in order to do anything, then it's going to be a bit of a process, but it's completely possible.
Yeah.
And it's just about changing the paycheck a little bit as to when the child gets the paycheck, and you're going to try and gradually fade yourself back. So that could be just starting with a task that the kid is really good at. So maybe it's like number matching or something that's very simple, or whatever your child has confidently mastered, and then having them do like one task with the aid behind them, and then they get rewarded, and then you gradually get them doing more and more, and the aid might move from being beside them to behind them to somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just one strategy. There's a bunch of different things we can do. We can also look at like what prompting, or what what things can help prompt the child that aren't a person, kind of nagging them.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing about this is that, the phrase, it's not rocket science, right? But in a sense, there is a science to fading an aid, and like everything else that gets done with our children with ABA, it's a slow move, it's subtle, and there are so many things that can be done along the way to set the child up and the aid up and the teacher up and the whole classroom for that amount of success. And I love the idea of looking at what is the child good at already and starting there.
Exactly.
Like how can we? So that totally makes sense to me.
And things like, rather than trying to move away from the reliance on the verbal prompts, so the person saying, okay, now you need to pay attention, okay, now do your work, okay, next do this, that we're going to try and maybe put visuals in place so that you can teach the child to pay attention to the visuals or follow a schedule or to-do list, or really that depends on your child's level of skills, just other forms of support that aren't somebody talking to them.
Absolutely. So there can be an icon that's on their desk that somebody can point to, or there can be an icon that somebody holds in their hand to prompt them as you're moving back. But also one of the things that I remember with Jem was that there, for a while, there was an icon that directed him if he was lost in a moment, so that the aide wouldn't prompt him. There was an icon, and I don't remember what it looked like, but she would touch something, and it was his cue to look around him to see what the other kids were doing, because they were working on him problem solving. It wasn't the first thing they worked on, but to problem solve and look and say, okay, I missed the direction where the teacher said to take out your book and turn to page 67, but building the skill of, okay, since I missed that and I see everybody else moving, I know I'm off, looking to see, Matthew's always on task and being rewarded. So, Matthew took out his math book, and what page is he on? Big skills that sometimes we would discount that are important for our kid to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. So the strategies you're going to put in place are going to be very dependent on what the kid's particular difficulties are, and even just you might have multiple different ones depending on what the kid's working on, what your kid's doing. You might want to it might be working on cueing the child into what's on the blackboard, or that might involve moving the kid forward in the class so they can see better, or cueing them, teaching them to raise their hand to ask the teacher a question, or ask a peer, or like you said, look around the class. Also building up just the time that the child works independently, so you're not constantly going, oh, get back to your work. Oh, you need to finish. You need to finish. We work a lot with kids in terms of trying to get them to work through a whole piece of homework or work through an entire task before they're looking for kind of
the paycheck,
or that they just teaching them to stay on task essentially, and that's a big deal. That's a big part of it.
But again, I think that as parents, I don't want to speak for everybody else, but certainly myself and my husband, I can speak for us, that we like for things to move fast. We want to see instant change. We're into that instant gratification, and sometimes moving the needle just a hair, a little bit, every single day, you get there faster than if you try to make a huge leap. So if we're trying to get somebody to stay on task for a whole page of things, I always want to start with that and go, well, let's see, I want to reward that. Let's see if you can stay on task for the whole thing. And then I will end up frequently disappointed. Instead of saying in my head, let's see if the person can stay on task for 2 problems and reinforcing that. And tomorrow we'll see if we can do that again. And the next day we'll see if we can go to 3. That moving slow thing, you guys are so good at that. It's a patience bone that I don't possess. I know I'm not the only parent, but I'm impressed by it, because I do see that you get results faster if you're patient and move slow.
It's hard. We are good at it with our kids, but we don't apply it to ourselves necessarily.
And so when you're at home and in the real world, you're not as patient.
I would like, I'm going to run 10 miles. That's going to be my goal, and then I don't necessarily approach it the best way, and then I give up. So we do. Everyone knows that if you're going to run a marathon, you're not going to just start running 23 miles or 26 miles. Like you're going to start with 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4, and we kind of accept that, but we just forget when it comes to other things.
Yes.
That it's better to start small.
Well, that makes me feel better that you guys in real life have a little less patience than you have with our children. But what I really am struck by in thinking about this and hearing you talk about it is that there are so many different ways that we can fade an aid depending on what's happening in the classroom and who you have at your disposal. But certainly relying upon the teacher would seem to be something that we can do too.
Right, and I think making sure that you're not feeding in the sense of being like, okay, we have the aid there 6 hours a day, now we're going to reduce it to 4, and you're just, so the aids, you're doing it in it, the aid's there, the aid's not.
Right.
That's not really the best approach. The best approach is to try and have the aid there, but feed the aid while she's there, not just making her not be there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I loved, at one point, I was at a meeting and they were saying, well, you know, your child's doing so well, so the aid is only going to come for these many hours. And I said, oh, great, I'll just ask him not to have autism during the hours she's not there.
Exactly.
You know? And that wasn't how it ended up being. I am such a sarcastic person sometimes. But
I mean, if that's the reality and you have to decrease the time that the aid's there, so it is going to be that, then that's more important. It's more important than to work on things like the child's ability to focus on or occupy themselves appropriately for certain lengths of time or complete stuff without the aid, and then that's easier stuff that the kids mastered and that they can focus on can be done while the aid's not there, and then the other things can still be worked on when the aid's there.
And then there's just the logistic issue for the schools, because a lot of times what they'll say is, well, we need to fade the aid and we need for the aid to not be there at a certain time, and they're being driven by, you know, the financial issue. And so it would make sense to have the aid leave during a portion of the day when the child has already proven that they can handle it during, but that's usually like in the middle of the day when it's a preferred activity, and the school will say, well, we'll have the aid start later in the day or leave earlier in the day, and those tend to be more problematic times for our kids. So, you know, that becomes a negotiation at the IEP table that you can surmount by making sure that somebody took data on how your child did during different subsections of the day, and saying this does not, you know, your plan does not support with the data that this is a good choice. But
and making them understand that you do want to fade the aid, but you need to do the fading of the aid while the aid is in the classroom. You can't just take the aid out. It doesn't just mean cutting hours. Like, your child needs to become more independent across the day. Yeah.
And one of the things that CARD has done, certainly not in all cases, but in some cases, is in the process of fading the aid, has at some point an aid comes into the classroom that is unknown to the child, unknown to the classroom. Obviously, the teacher knows that the aid is there for the individual child, but the child thinks that they're there without an aid, that there's a classroom person or somebody observing who helps multiple children, but in fact the aid is there for the child, that's part of the fade process with some kids, that unknown shadow, which is a fascinating little thing. Not always the easiest thing to do in a school system. You know, you have to know what the limitations.
Nosy children. Children always notice when there's someone in the classroom. You know, and I'm talking about the other kids, not just your kid, but the other kids, and it can be really awkward trying to get them to stop asking questions.
And nosy parents too. Nosy parents. Can I tell you that we had an unknown aide for a while in Jem's class, and it killed us. The aide that he had for a long time, we just loved, and it literally was just like ripping a part of our family apart to say goodbye to her, but it was part of the progression that, you know, he needed. And I was standing there at the gate to pick up my child about 2 weeks into school, and a parent said, oh, we're so sorry that, you know, this other person has gone, and now we noticed that this other person in the classroom, is that his new aide, and now I'm supposed to uphold the parts of, you know, that this is supposed to be. I said, no, that person is there for the whole class. This other parent turns around and said, oh, that's not true. We don't have, our budget doesn't allow for that. That aide is there for one child and one child. And I'm looking at the parent going, could you help me out here a little? And he was like, oh no, they never do that. Classrooms don't have aides anymore. And he thought he was, you know, just telling information, and I had to pull him aside and say, hey, can you buy a vowel here? Because he has kids that have, you know, and so he knew he was speaking from a place of authority, but I said, you know, could you think it through? And he was like, oh. Thanks so much. But anyway, so many things that you can do with the aid. But I think it really comes down to having to work with the school and what they can do.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you're going to have to work with the school, but then looking at maybe taking some data, like you said, and figuring out what exactly where exactly your child is needing support still, and then you can start to figure out strategies for feeding the help or helping your child find other ways to get these tasks done.
Yeah, absolutely. A whole set of skills. And I also would say that I do think that part of it is, and they say this to aides all the time, that it's their job to work themselves out of a job. And in this economy, that's, well, yes, but you know that, you know, for a therapist, you know that there's going to be another child. Okay. There's always. And for those aides, sometimes, you know, it means that there's not going to be another job for them because there isn't money for another job, or somebody else didn't get it negotiated for the IEP. And in this economy, I think it's unreasonable for us to expect that they're going to be really good at working themselves out of a job. And it's something that my husband and I tried to be mindful of and reinforce to them that, you know, if you get to the point where you're no longer working with our child, we write great letters of recommendation. We'll look forward to talking to the district about how great you were at doing the job of working yourself out of the job, to sort of combat that, because I do think that's a part of it in this school system. That why would they want to work themselves out of a job? I think they care about our kids, but still, you got to put food on your own table. A terrible, terrible choice for them.
I'm not sure if we really talked about the attention component, though.
Oh, let's talk about that. And somebody...
This parent was concerned about the attention.
And the parent wrote in and said his aide is gone during what I think is the most difficult transition of the school day, right after recess to math. Amazing that he would not have support during this time of day before he goes to his resource room for a half an hour after recess. Yeah, that is really, really hard. But I do wonder if that isn't something that if you take data on that you could not get changed. It will require IEP meetings and the such, and a huge amount of effort on your part and emotional effort on your part. But I think, you know, it might be worth it looking into that. But let's talk about the attention component of the aid.
Yeah, so if you're sure that your child is being reinforced by attention, or his on-task behavior is being reinforced for attention, or by the attention of the aide, I actually think that probably the child is being reinforced for not being on task, because it's like usually what happens is the child's attention, they're doing something, and then their attention drifts, and then the aide will be like, oh, you need to get back on task. So it actually is.
It's reinforcing.
It's actually reinforcing the not being on task. That depends on the child, because not all children are reinforced by that. But that's what we see commonly happening.
Right.
So that's where we're talking about trying to take data, figure that out, then shifting the reward to when the child's on task for a certain amount of time. You then provide attention before the child gets off task.
Right.
Does that make sense? So you're not waiting until the child's off task to provide the attention. You're looking at the child, okay, we're going to have the child do one math problem and give them attention, rather than being like, here's your thing, and then we'll just wait until you get off task, and then we're going to have you work on something for a minute and then immediately say, oh, good job, that's great, keep going.
Yeah.
So we're having the aide talk to the child when they're doing what we want them to do. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. I'm figuring out in my head, how do you write that into the IEP as the parent? You can ask them to put your child on a sensory diet of non-contingent reinforcement when they're on task, right?
You can reinforce on task.
So that when they're on task, that we write it into the IEP, and I'm using the term sensory diet incorrectly, but schools get it. If you say, we need a sensory diet of every 5 minutes that he's on task, we're going to give him attention. That's when the aide will give him attention, and figuring out a way to, as you said, to fade the attention given when they're off task by moving it to something that's less intrusive.
Yeah, so you're going to be giving attention. We would have to figure out, I'd have to look at, for example, if I was doing this with a child, I'd go in and I'd figure out, well, how often are they coming off task?
Okay.
So how soon after I give them something to do are they coming off task?
Okay.
And maybe every 30 seconds they're like being prompted by the aide, or maybe every 2 minutes, or maybe every 20 minutes. It just depends on the child. So then you have like a baseline of how often.
Right. I was picking the 5 minutes out of random, but of course you're doing the thing that is correct, saying we have to have a baseline.
Yes,
when.
You want a baseline, and then you're going to start probably with something slightly under that, so that to make sure that the child doesn't come off task before you manage to give them attention. So say you realize your kid comes off task about every 2 minutes, then maybe you're going to start at the minute level or something like that, and you're going to say, as soon as the child's been attending for 1 minute, I'm going to give them attention.
Okay.
So I'm going to say, yeah, good job, being whatever you want to reward them for, and then you're gradually going to increase the time that they have to attend before you give them attention. That would be one strategy. Also, things like teaching the children how to recruit attention appropriately from peers, at times that it's appropriate. Obviously not like jumping up and down and shouting in the class in the middle of a lesson or something, but trying to redirect children to peers. So particularly in play, what I see a lot with aides is the children tend to interact with the aide as opposed to with other children.
Yes.
And aides just are. It's like a reciprocal kind of thing where the aide gets reinforced by the child interacting with them, and they're trying to help the child play appropriately. So rather than redirecting the child to say what they're saying to the other child beside them or interacting with the child, so I would be trying to work with that aide to help them not say anything and just get the child saying things or doing things with the other kids, or prompting the other kids to say stuff to the child rather than you saying stuff to the child. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And I do think that your ally here, oddly enough, is the school administration. That, the school administration wants to fade that aid more than you do, because it's a lot of money for that aid. So if you show interest and say, we really are looking to fade the aid and we'd like to create a plan to fade the aid, and we want to start with looking at how often they're having to prompt, and how many minutes it is or how many seconds it is after the teacher gives an assignment before the aid has to prompt, to get that baseline, and finding somebody at the school, whether it's the school psychologist, to write the plan of how we're going to fade the aid, and encourage them to let you be a part of that. And hopefully it's somebody who knows some of these different strategies that we're talking about.
And somebody who can recognize what skills it is that your child needs to be taught in order to be less dependent. So like with your kid, where they realized, oh, well, he will be able to do this if we can teach him how to look around and and then imitate what the other kids are doing. So having someone who's able to go in and observe and pick out what the problem is, that's also really important.
Yes, and I will be honest with you, and I might get in hot water for this, that our school was not capable of doing that for us. Even though my son goes to a great school, they weren't capable of doing that for us, and so we had to have CARD come in to do that. And you depending on your school, you might find that you've got somebody, you might have a BCBA at the school who really, once they hear from you that you're really excited about the idea of a plan to fade the aid, which doesn't mean you're actually doing it yet, but a plan first, you might find somebody at the school who really gets it and is excited about this. If you don't, you might have to have a consultant come in and make recommendations. And that is certainly what we did. Was we had CARD come in and observe him and come back and say, here's what's going on and here's the direction you need to go to be successful about this. So lots of things to consider. Hopefully that's giving you some ideas to start with. We should take a break, but when we come back, we'll have more with Evelyn Gould and your questions that you guys are writing in. I do want to do a shout out before we leave to the person who said that their 10-year-old ate his first hot dog yesterday and that they're celebrating. That, those are huge, huge things. So congratulations. I'm thrilled for you. What a great thing. We're going to go to break. We'll be back more with Evelyn Gould after these messages.
Hi, I'm Bryce Myler, and I'm the Contracts Director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I've been here for about 5 years. CARD has several employees with many years of insurance experience, dealing with insurance, dealing with pre-authorizations, dealing with discovering whether there's coverage or not. So we have more experience than any ABA provider that I've ever come across. So for a prospective client, somebody that may be interested in, ABA therapy and what CARD has to offer, We have a special 800 number, and you call that number. They will talk to you about what we have to offer, how ABA works. He'll ask you for the front and back of your ID card, and then we check to see if you do or do not have coverage. If you have coverage for ABA therapy, we try to do whatever we can to set it up where we can bill for you and you don't have to fight with the insurance company every month to get your claims paid. For California residents, we recently did a series of insurance trainings all over the state, and you can click on the link below to watch pretty much the full presentation. It has a lot of information, how you can get your insurance company to comply with what they're supposed to do, understanding the networks, and many other valuable pieces of information.
Welcome back. We're reading what you guys have written. It's very exciting. So we had a little bit more that came in about the aid. Do you want to address that, or should I just read it? The person said, I love you guys. This is awesome advice. Right now, the aid uses an iPad and makes check marks each time he gets off task. 3 checks, and he moves his color down. So it sounds like he actually moves it down himself.
Yes. So I'm assuming that that's like a traffic light system.
Yeah. I would assume so too. If it's not, write and tell us.
I think that it's really, really great that the aid is actually taking data on the fact on how many times the child is coming off task. That's really good. And there's obviously then a consequence in place for when he comes off task too many times. So what would make this work really well and actually is going to help your child build up the time they're on task would be to introduce the reinforcement component, like we talked about. So making sure that the aid is, so we're trying to get him to not get check marks, essentially.
Right now they're giving him a punishment if he does it, and you're talking about giving him a reward for the absence of the behavior.
Exactly. So
I love it when I get it. Can I just say, because there was a time when I would not have gotten that, but I get that now.
Yeah, because what we know is that reinforcement is, if you want to establish like long-term gains in behavior and new behaviors and all that, that you need to have the reinforcement there, and punishment really doesn't teach your child what to do. It's very good at telling them what they didn't do. But it doesn't help the child then be successful, so to speak. So what you really want to have in place there is like something we talked about before. So if he normally is getting a check mark like every couple of minutes or so, or even if you want to go with a number of check marks, whatever it is, a baseline of how long he is successful before he isn't. And then trying to put in place some kind of stars or whatever, whether if you want to fade away the spoken, you can easily give the child a token. It sounds like if you're using check marks and if he understands 3 check marks and then I have to move my color down, then he's probably going to understand like a star or something. Good job. And so that's what you want to get in there with the stars before he gets the check mark.
And you get 3 stars and you get something else.
And then setting the goal really realistic so that he's likely to be successful and get the reward or whatever it is that he's reinforced by.
It's just a little shift, but could make a big difference. Now, they also wrote, I would love to have an ABA person observe my son and his dependence on his aid. However, my husband thinks this would cause a rift between us and the school. I get that. I totally do. And I would say before you go to having a consultant come in and do I would see what you could make happen with the school first. Because if you've got an aide who's there with an iPad and she is, what I'm supposing from what I'm hearing is you've got a system that's a little high tech, which is kind of cool. So there's a way to take data that's really high tech, that your child does respond to it, that he is actually moving his color down, that the aide is taking good data. Those all sound like really good things, and there's just a little shift to make it work. And you know, maybe if you met with the school and said, hey, can we change this from this to this, see what happens.
I mean, I think, it's just shifting this thinking from consequences to like antecedents. So like the stuff that you want to do prior to that problem behavior happening to help prevent it from happening, and then also the reinforcement component, so rewarding the behavior, the behavior that you're looking for when it's happening. So you're trying to, at the minute, like it sounds like the strategy, so you've got the triggers and then the behavior and then the consequences. At the minute, everything's happening at the back end. And what we want to shift our strategies to the preventative teaching part. So concentrating on the positive and trying to put in place strategies that are more likely to get the positive behaviour happening.
Exactly.
And that's what you really want to get your school thinking about. And I agree with you, Shannon. I think it's probably better to try and either try and approach the school and work with the school as much as you can, and then if there's a way for you to make them think it's their idea to have someone coming in, that also is a really good way to do it.
Yes. And I, you know, that can be a dicey thing, but it's fairly easy to make them think it's their idea, really, because if you say,
or like
what can we do?
Like trying to go down the road of if they can see the benefits for them, like if you can help them see that this will help cost them less money in the long run, or maybe just make the teacher's life easier or something by having someone come in and just be really specific about doing an observation, telling them these are also nicer strategies. And it makes you feel good as well. The aide will feel good if she's using a positive strategy, a more like friendly reinforcement teaching strategy than the punishment kind of stuff. Because the other thing about that kind of response, that's called response cost whenever you're taking something away, is that you can, what do you do once your child gets down to the red? It's like,
where do you go
when
from there?
There's nothing left to lose? Like,
we've all been there, have we not?
There. So that's a really difficult place to be, and it's difficult for your child because the children tend to just be like, oh well, screw it, there's nothing and then the aide is kind of has no tools left in her toolbox to know how to what
and
to
it's
do.
11:15 and you've got hours left to go, and where do you go from here?
Exactly. So I think that can help solve all those types of problems.
Very exciting. Very, very, very exciting. Okay. And I do, you know, I talk all the time about getting contentious with the school. I want you guys to know that it's a tough choice always if you're going to do that. You have to decide, because your child stays in that school for years afterwards, and you don't want to be completely adversarial with them if you don't have to be. Okay, now we had some questions about, I love the things that you guys are writing in. We had some questions about math, and there's a series of questions here, and so I'm going to address them one at a time here. Hi Shannon, I was wondering if you or one of your guests this week might be able to talk about how I can best support my third grader mainstream son with math word problems. He has no problems with memorized facts and knows addition, subtraction, multiplication, and even division facts, but when he's asked to read a short story problem, the words get in the way. How can I help him succeed in math when comprehension gets in the way? Thanks. And then the person added, I also wanted to add that when I let him just do the facts out of the story problem, he breezes through his homework. When he gets irritable and mad when he has to read and show his work. This is the bane of my existence right now, the show your work, which turns homework into a battle. Amen. I hear you. The show your work thing, not the friend of the kids with autism. I get it. I get why it's important.
And it's also, this is a really common problem, and not for kids of all ages and adults too, that I know of who have autism or Asperger's. And it's really is the comprehensive. It's not that your child has a problem with math, but it sounds like he's a whiz at math. But his problem is pulling out the relevant math, the facts, and turning them into the problem. And it sounds like from what you're saying, you actually do recognise that, because you said that he has problems with the comprehensive, and when you pull the facts out, he's able to do it. So it's, we definitely don't, he doesn't sound like he needs skills in math taught. It's like we would have to figure out ways to help him recognise when he's faced with a paragraph of words, what words are the most important, like the salient information in that, and pulling that out, and then having a way for him to, I mean, the visual thing I think is really important, like finding a way for him, whether it's highlighting, we do various things like highlighting, having the child, you know, starting with a small sentence rather than like a big paragraph, and just teaching the child to recognize the certain types of things dependent on what the type of question is. That makes sense. It's really child specific, so I can't really be specific about what I would do for your particular child, but it's definitely a comprehension issue, and determining what the salient information is that he needs.
Yeah. And they do have different strategies that they use in schools, because I know that they've been doing with this GEM, the circling and the underlining. So one of the first things is that I see in the work that they're doing with GEM, and GEM's in 4th grade now, is that in the word problem, determining what the function is that they need to apply. Is this an addition problem?
Exactly.
Is this a subtraction problem? Is this a comparison problem? What is it going to be? And that what we have seen that they've been doing with him is just giving him a word problem, and he doesn't even have to do the math in it, but he just has to identify the function and circle the word that corresponds to what the function is going to be. And sometimes that is convoluted.
I know. Well, essentially, we might do like a task analysis type thing, and then I would sit and think, these are the types of problems that the kid's being asked. What skills what do you need to do in order to solve this problem? And then if you have like steps, so that you're it's like find the function of the problem. Now you have the function. Now you need to find this information, this information, and even having like a visual, whether it's boxes or like a little keys, little prompts, visuals or something, or words that help your child. Okay, I need to find this. That's that. Now I need to find this information. That. And actually, we all naturally do this when we solve problems. So I know when I had to do a test, I think it was about a year ago now, and it involved some verbal reasoning or something like that. And I know that when I read those paragraphs, I have a system, so I'll skim read it, and then I'm like, okay, 2 men, okay, 6 miles. And like I'm looking for specifics, and I write those things down, and then that helps me pull out the facts that I need. So it's really breaking it down and then trying to teach your child each one of those.
Because we all organize information in a different way. And finding out how your child organizes information, and a lot of our kids want to organize it in their heads, not on the paper.
And that showing the work thing is a really frustrating thing. And like I even remember that being frustrating for me, because I just didn't work out those the problems the way that they wanted me to do to show my work. And I remember it, so I can't imagine how frustrating it must be for your child. And unfortunately, it's like that's the way they require you to do it. I imagine there's no way around it, so we just have to try and teach our kids to.
I will say this: we've tried in the last 2 years to extra reinforce whenever he shows the work. We made stickers for him at school and I literally paid him $1 a day if he came home with a sticker that said I showed the steps, is what the sticker said. It wasn't reinforcing enough for him. I would have had to write a $100 check, and I didn't have a $100 check every day, right? But we worked on it in a bunch of different ways with Jem, and it was one of the things that we talked about with Temple Grandin 2 weeks ago, because one of the first things out of her mouth when she was talking to me about my son, which was so exciting, can I just tell you, to sit and talk with her about my son, and she said, is he good at math? And I said, he's really good at math. He doesn't want to show the steps. And she said, oh, be careful. Don't be giving him just the baby math. Make sure that if you're going to ask him to do the stuff that they're going to ask him to do at school, and you have to, and she specified that, she said, make sure you give him an outlet for the other more advanced math skills. And she wrote me a bunch of different websites that I'm going to share eventually on the show. We're making them all nice and pretty, that she recommended to go to work on the higher level math. I think that makes his teacher nervous, I'll be honest with you, but I will tell you that there's an app that we got on his iPad the other day. We got it around the holidays. It's called Splash Math. And you can try it out for free. We've upgraded it now and bought the whole thing. And he's loving it. And you can get it in different grades. So you can get 3rd grade, you can get 4th grade, you can get 5th grade. So you're not getting wildly off the chart college math, but you can move ahead a little bit. And I do see a difference, because in his class right now in 4th grade, they've been doing division where there's a remainder. And there's this wonky thing that they're doing that, they divide the number and they go, it's 36 with a remainder of 2, and they write an R with a 2. And he came home and showed this to my husband and I. We both went, what? when are you ever going to use that? And I went back to the teacher and she said, I know, it's the way we teach this and it's getting them ready for decimal points. And I said, if you teach it this way, he's never going to get the decimal point. Can we just do the decimal point? He's already doing the decimal point. And she went, do it. Just go with it. But the rest of the kids are writing R2.
Yeah.
Well, the art, and he's writing decimal point in whatever you divided the 2 into. So he's getting the actual number, because when you do the SATs, if you write R2, and I get it, it's a step for other kids, but sometimes our kids need to run when other kids need to walk. Yeah. And there are times when our kids need to crawl when other kids are running. And I think that's a really important distinction to make, that they have to do what they have to do in the class, but the splash math, free, and then, you know, if you like it well enough, and they even on the free one, they'll track your child's progress.
That's really good.
And it has really good reinforcers in it. I was playing it with him over the holidays, and there's a little flying saucer that comes out and says awesome and cool and neat when you get a question right. And when you don't get it right, it just comes out and it goes, oh, try again, right? and it has music that goes with it, and I didn't want to listen to the music, so I turned the sound down, and he said, Mom, but I like it when the flying saucer comes out. It's my favorite part. And not only that, after they answer a certain number of questions right, they get access to a game.
Oh, that's really good.
Splash math. Okay. Okay, how to prove my child's comprehension is always, I think it's improve my child's comprehension is always the most difficult battle for me. You know, we had Emily Island on the show, and she's a mom of, I think he's 27 years old, and she has written a book about this, and I am getting ready to do the book too. And the reason why she wrote the book is because her son, who was doing so well, went to take an entrance exam to something, and he came back and he said, I don't think I did well because it was a comprehension thing. And so she is a teacher.
I mean, comprehension is just so difficult for our kids. And I think last week we talked about theory of mind.
Yes.
And how that's making inferences about what other people are thinking and feeling. And it kind of is similar to comprehension in that the point of comprehension is that you're not just literally reading words. You're like then having to get the bigger picture of the meaning. It's like that process of taking these words and then going, okay, well, what does this actually mean, and what do I actually need to do? It's that getting the bigger picture meaning that's really, really hard for our kids. And in the same way, in social situations, it's the same problem. It's like they're watching something and hearing what someone's saying, but then they're not able to put it all together and go, okay, well, what's actually happening?
Yeah. I think it's difficult for a lot of people, not just individuals on the autism spectrum, but a worthwhile thing to work on.
But it is, remember that it's a learned skill, so the fact that I might be good at it or Shannon might be good at it, you're not born good at it.
Right.
You actually do learn. That's a learned skill, so it's possible to teach it, and our kids with autism just don't learn in the same way, so they just didn't necessarily develop those skills in the same way that I did, but it's learned, so it's teachable. So it is teachable. We just have to break these things down into the small components, and if that's not small enough, then breaking them down into the even smaller components and making sure that figuring out what the prerequisite skills are, and our kids have those foundational skills, and then building up. So it is possible to learn these things.
Okay. And I'm also, I know we're about out of time here. A little later on this week, we're going to have Dr. Adele Nadowski on, and I'm going to ask her to come in and talk about precision training with math, because it's there's some really good research about how effective and reinforcing this is, and how the kids chart their own progress as a reinforcer, and I'll have her talk a little bit about that as well. But I thank you so much. This has been so informative. I have things to go home and consider and think about myself, and thank you so much for everything that you had to say today, and thank you guys for writing in. We're going to say goodbye to Evelyn and let her get back to her day, and I'll be back to close out the show, so stick with us.
Just go like this. Can you see me? Puedes mirarme aquí? Okay. Hi, I'm Ishida. Say hi, Ethan. Hi. My son was diagnosed with autism in November 2004. With Ethan, almost immediately, we noticed things that were troublesome, that he just didn't sleep. He would vomit in the crib. There were a lot of sensory issues.
Then he'd have like 20 of the trains lined up, and if you came in and took one train out, just meltdown completely.
Guttural instinct is to think that there's nothing wrong. Who wants to look at their child and go, there's something wrong with that child? You don't. You always want to see the best in your child.
Will my kid be able to go to school? Will he interact with his peers? Will he be able to have a healthy relationship? Will he get married? I really thought that autism was like a death sentence. A lot of hope was given to me through CARD. This was my third agency and the best agency we had. And there was no way in the world I was going to give up CARD because of the gains I saw Ethan was having.
You did it!
And I remember when Doreen saw us for the evaluation, she says, but by the time he's 6, he will be recovered. And that's exactly what happened.
I'll fix that.
Welcome back. I just want to thank all of you for being with us. Emily, if we have time, we're going to cycle through some of the different ways you can get in touch with us. We went a little bit long, but I don't know about you. I was so excited by some of the things that Evelyn Gould was sharing with us. I did see that the question came back that I suppose you were saying improve, but you were saying prove, to prove your comprehension. And hopefully if your child is participating in some of the testing that's done, the teachers will begin to see. But I do think it falls on our shoulders sometimes to fill in those gaps. And maybe we'll have Emily Island back to talk. We did do an interview with her about her book about reading comprehension, and I would encourage you to check that out because I know that's my next thing on my list of things to do. And maybe we could talk about it, you and I, on the air here. All right, we are really seriously out of time, but I want to thank all of you for being here with us and remind you that tomorrow, it's Big Wednesday here at Autism Live. Ask Dr. Doreen. We'll be here with Dr. Doreen Grampichet, and I will make sure that I ask her a question about methods of teaching math and comprehension. I think that's a great topic. And then tomorrow in the second half of the show, we have Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson, and our guest Becky Estep will be with us. It'll be an exciting show. Until tomorrow, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.